Hello and welcome. I'm Ashley and this is Beauty Biography. Every Friday we explore the life of one iconic beauty while creating an inspired makeup look. If that sounds like fun to you, it most certainly is fun to me, then be sure to click the thumbs up button and also subscribe. We have a monthly giveaway here on the channel. This month it is a $250 Nordstrom gift card, so be sure to check the description box below for details on that. Today we're going to be diving into the life of one of the most iconic sex symbols of all time, Sophia Loren. She has such a story of resilience. Her life, the obstacles and hardships that she had to overcome to become the star she is today are incredible. So let us begin. Sophia Loren is born on September 20th, 1934 in Rome, Italy. You know, I always love to start with the astrological sign, and Sophia has a great one. She is a Virgo. I have a very soft spot for Virgos. My youngest brother is a Virgo, and I just happen to really like Virgos. They're hardworking, reliable, and we will see this in Sophia's life. Sophia's mother is Romilda Villani, who is 20 years old when she gives birth to Sophia. She gives birth to Sophia in a clinic in Rome that is for unwed mothers. Romilda is unwed because Sophia's father, Riccardo Ceccoloni, he's not great. When he finds out that Romilda is pregnant with Sophia, he not only refuses to marry her, which at this time would have been, like pretty much what everyone did back then, but he refuses to marry her, and he also refuses to provide any financial support whatsoever. He also happens to be a really big liar. So Romilda is an aspiring actress, and Riccardo Ceccoloni has told her, "Oh, I am like a very well-connected film producer." He's not. He's actually a construction engineer with no ties to the film industry. I'm sure that Romilda was sad that Riccardo didn't want to marry her, but I think she kind of dodged a bullet here, because who wants to be married to a liar? Because Riccardo does not offer any financial support to Romilda, she moves herself and Sophia back to her village, which is near Naples, and they move in with Romilda's parents. Now, being the time that it was, the 1930s, and you're in Italy, a very Catholic country, this is quite scandalous, but it is said that Romilda's mother was very defensive of her daughter and her granddaughter, and she would not let anyone, speak ill of her daughter or, be rude to them. She was very defensive of them, and she welcomed them into the home with just open arms and was very loving to both of them. So good for her. She's a good mom. Growing up, Sophia was very scrawny. She was often ill, and the other kids in the village would make fun of her, not only because of the fact that her mom was unwed, but also because she was so skinny. They had this nickname for her, this teasing nickname that translates to toothpick, which, funny enough, my mom was a very skinny child, and when she was growing up, she told me that when she was growing up, people would call her toothpick. So it just goes to show you, mean children are not very creative, and being mean to people makes you a loser, so don't do it. Now, you would think that after Riccardo lied to Sophia's mother, Romilda, that Romilda would have been, just completely done with Riccardo. But the thing is, women are human too, and sometimes we make bad choices romantically. So in 1937, Romilda has a second child with Riccardo, and this is Sophia's younger sister, Maria. So as I was saying earlier, having one child out of wedlock was quite scandalous at this time. So can you imagine having two children out of wedlock? Oh my gosh, what is everyone gonna say? Well, not much, because it's 1937 in Italy, so everyone has much bigger problems. What are these problems, you ask? Well, just the rise of fascism, Benito Mussolini, and the beginning of a conflict that will later be known as World War II. If you didn't know, during World War II, Italy was part of what was known as the Axis powers. These were the bad guys. They were not the Americans, not the British. They were not good. These were the fascists. Now, Sofia's village near Naples was called Posoli, and Posoli had a munitions plant. And because of this munitions plant, it was a frequent target of air raids and bombs by the Allied powers. So very frequently in that time during the war, all the people of Sofia's village would have to go into this like underground tunnel system where they would hide and shelter from the bombs. And this was just really bad. There was like unimaginable poverty, a lot of sickness because they're in these tunnels, a ton of people in these tunnels where there's rats and like sewer water. It was horrific. This is a terribly difficult way to live, and there actually comes a breaking point for Sofia's family when one day during an air raid, they're trying to get down into the tunnel system, and Sophia is struck by a piece of shrapnel in her chin. As a result of this, her family is like, okay, we've got to get out of Posoli. So they go to Naples, where they end up sheltering with some distant relatives for the rest of the war. Once Italy is liberated by the Allies, Sophia and her family do return to Posoli. Sophia is 11 years old, and she begins to frequent the movie theater in town where they often show American movies. She absolutely falls in love with film. She especially loves the romantic movies. Her favorite is Blood and Sand, which actually stars Beauty Biography alum Miss Rita Hayworth. The once very scrawny, kind of like almost ugly duckling Sophia has a growth spurt, and she just almost overnight transforms into this gorgeous teenager. And her mom, like all good stage moms, recognizes this and is like, oh, you know what? My dreams of stardom are done, but maybe Sophia could be the star of this family and lift us out of poverty. So she enters Sophia in the Miss Naples pageant. They are very poor, so much so that Sophia's grandmother has to make her evening gown for the competition out of the curtains that they have hanging in their home. It must have been a beautiful curtain gown because Sophia wins Miss Naples and she gets $35, which is about $350 now. She also gets 3 rolls of wallpaper and she gets a ticket to Rome. Sophia's mother travels with her to Rome, which at the time has a blossoming film industry that has started. It's called like a second renaissance because there are so many talented filmmakers in Italy that are now making these big like epic films. Over the next year, Sophia and her mom both do as much work as they can as extras in films, and Sophia actually becomes the subject of a very popular photo comic strip, which I did not know that there were photo comic strips, but apparently there were. In 1950, Sophia meets Carlo Ponti, a very powerful and influential filmmaker in Italy. Sophia is 16 and Carlo is 37, and I think we all know where this is headed. Carlo is in awe of Sophia's beauty, and so he orders a screen test for her, and he knows she's going to be a star. The only problem is that other people see this screen test and they're like, yeah, Carlo, I don't know what you're talking about. She's kind of awkward. Like, she just doesn't translate well on film because she's very tall and she just seems, just kind of awkward and burly on film. But Carlo doesn't want to hear it. He believes in Sophia. He knows that she's going to be a star. So he keeps working with her, getting her more screen tests, and he is just sure of it. Sophia Loren, well, she's not Sophia Loren yet. Almost. Sophia Ceccoloni is going to be a star. Sophia and Carlo fall in love very quickly, which is great, right? Love is a many-splendored thing. Except Carlo is legally married. He has been separated for a long time, but because Italy and the Catholic Church do not recognize divorce, he is still legally married. So this love affair is very much going, but it's gonna have a lot of twists and turns. More to come on that in a little bit. When Sophia turns 18, she changes her name from Sophia Ceccoloni to Sophia Loren, and she is now booking enough small roles in films that she can support herself, her sister, and her mother in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Rome. Sophia puts a lot of work into these small roles over these 2 years. Again, she's very hardworking, very dedicated, and this pays off because in 1953, she lands her first starring role in the movie Aida. Her performance is critically acclaimed, and this leads to her getting cast in her breakout role, which is the Gold of Naples. In The Gold of Naples, she plays a hot-headed Neapolitan pizza girl, and her comedic timing is just fantastic. She really shines, and again, this is her breakout role. This film is produced by her lover, Carlo Ponti, also Dino De Laurentiis, which, if you didn't know, is the grandfather of Giada De Laurentiis of Food Network fame. Sophia's performance in The Gold of Naples really shows off her comedic timing. She's very lively and passionate, and because of this role, she becomes a household name in Italy. The Italian media actually names 1955 the year of Sophia, and indeed, she is only 21 years old at this time, and she already has 36 film credits to her name. Again, that Virgo work ethic. She's a huge star in Italy, and Carlo is like, you know what? Next up, world domination. Now, for world domination, obviously Carlo knows we have to get Sophia in some American films. Like, we need to get her into American mainstream film. The year is 1957, and Carlo arranges a meeting with the director Stanley Kramer, who is about to start filming an American movie in Spain called The Pride and the Passion that's also going to star Cary Grant. And Carlo is thinking, you know what, like, if I go in there and I tell him, you know, I really want to get Sophia into Hollywood, she'd be great. She's working on her English. Like, she's working really hard to get better at English. And you know what? She'll do the film for like a very low, very reasonable salary. So he's thinking, you know, if I go in and like just lowball him, maybe he'll hire Sophia just so we can get her foot into the door in American cinema. But Stanley has already seen Sophia in the movie The River Girl, and he absolutely loves her. He thinks she's like perfect for his film. Carlo Ponti doesn't know this until he shows up for the meeting. Stanley walks in. Carlo's totally ready to like be like, oh, here's our very cheap offer. You can get Sophia Loren for this very low price. And Stanley surprises him by immediately being like, I want Sophia for this movie. I will pay $200,000. In today's money, that is about 1.8 million. So obviously Carlo is like, yeah, of course. It is sad that Sophia, who was, again, still learning English at this time, was having a little bit of difficulty with the dialogue in the film when they started filming The Pride and the Passion. And Cary Grant, just ever the gentleman, was like, oh, I can give you some private lessons. Yes, they had an affair. The Pride and the Passion is a hit, and Sophia's performance is critically acclaimed. However, the affair between Cary Grant and Sophia is not quite as successful. Cary wants to marry Sophia. He wants to leave his wife and marry Sophia, but Sophia is very torn by this because she loves Carlo, and really the difficulty in her relationship with Carlo is not that she doesn't love him madly, it's that she can't openly live with him or marry him because he is still legally married. So this is a very tough choice for Sophia, but ultimately she decides not to marry Cary Grant. Sophia next appears in the film Boy on a Dolphin, and this film skyrockets her to like international fame, in large part because of a scene in which she rises up from the scene in only a wet t-shirt. At this point in the 1950s, the sex kitten is on the rise, and Paramount Pictures sees Sophia and thinks, yeah, she definitely has sex, like she definitely has the look and the feel and the energy of that. We want that. So they offer Carlo and Sophia a 4-film contract. So Sophia and Carlo have this great new contract with Paramount, and they move to Hollywood. Now, because the culture in Hollywood is much less conservative and much less religious than it is in Italy, they are able to live together openly as a couple, which is fantastic for Sophia. She loves that. That makes her so happy. While Sophia is happy that the new culture allows them to live together, she does have a difficult time adjusting to other aspects of the culture. There is some serious culture shock going on. She has come from like a very conservative Italian culture that she's lived in her whole life and is now in the middle of Hollywood in the 1950s. It's a lot to adjust to. There is a famous photograph of Sophia and Jane Mansfield that was taken in 1957, which I think we've all been Sophia in this photo before. I actually read an article in Vanity Fair where Sophia is talking about this photograph. It was taken at a party that was thrown for her by Paramount, and it was like a welcome to Hollywood party right when she arrived. And she said that Jane Mansfield was the last person to arrive. She walks all through the room, just, you know, everything kind of out there, as you can see in the photo, walks right up to Sophia's table and just like sits down right next to Sophia. And Sophia is just, she's in shock. She's in shock. Her direct quote in Vanity Fair is, "Where are my eyes? I'm staring at her nipples because I'm afraid that they're going to come onto my plate." Like, she genuinely was just like, what? Like, this was not what she would have seen in Italy. And I just think that that anecdote is very telling of this part of Sophia's life, because she very much was a fish out of water. She's also quite uncomfortable and stiff on film at this time as a direct result of being so uncomfortable in real life. The first film she makes in the US is called Desire Under the Elms, and it is a box office dud. It's not good. Things do turn around with Sophia's next film, though. It is Houseboat with her former lover, Cary Grant. Now, the chemistry between Cary Grant and Sophia in this movie is so crystal clear. Like, on screen, everyone can see it. Everyone that's making the film, they're all like, wow, this is like a love connection. Carlo Ponti sees this chemistry between Sophia and Cary Grant, and he's like, uh-oh, I've got to do something to keep my woman, right? So he hires lawyers to arrange a divorce between he and his wife, and he finds like this legal loophole in Mexico that allows him and Sophia to get married in Mexico. It's not really a fairy tale wedding. There are two lawyers that stand in for Sophia and Carlo. This is called like marriage by proxy. So they stand in for them and like take the vows for them. Odd? Yes. Legal? Also yes. However, that divorce that Carlo secured, that's another story. When the Italian press learns about the marriage between Sophia and Carlo, it kicks off a huge scandal. The Vatican loses its mind and charges Sophia and Carlo with bigamy. And so Sophia and Carlo are like, you know what? We're just not going to go back to Italy for a while. Let's see if this dies down. We're just going to stay over here in Hollywood for a bit. Sophia's next American film is The Black Orchid. She plays a middle-aged Italian widow named Rose Bianco. And this is quite like a departure from her previous roles, but she knocks it out of the park. The Venice Film Festival nominates Sophia for the Best Actress Award for that film festival, which is amazing because she's from Italy, so this would just be such a huge honor. But Sophia's like, you know what? No, I'm not going. You know, she's still understandably quite upset that the Vatican has tried to charge her with bigamy, and she just feels like, no, it's not going to be fun. I don't want to go. I'm not doing it. But Carlo, you know, he recognizes that this is a big deal for her, and he genuinely loves her. Like, he's a good husband. And so he tells her, you know what, you need to go. You're going to regret not going. I'm going to hire extra security. It's all going to be fine. And he convinces her to go. Sophia goes, but she's just so convinced, like, I'm going to be treated like crap. This is going to be terrible. People are just going to be awful to me. And she's wrong. When she arrives in Italy, there are throngs and throngs of fans waiting to welcome her. They throw flowers at her. They just shower her with love. They chant at her Queen Sophia. They love her. They're proud of her. And she gets this beautiful homecoming that obviously would mean so much anyway, but I think means even more because she's been being dragged through the mud by the Italian media. And it turns out, like, no, that's not how the Italian people feel. The Italian people love Queen Sophia. Sophia wins the Best Actress Award at the film festival, and this is just huge for her because she's only 25 years old and already she has accomplished everything that her and her mother just dreamed of for her. And she's genuinely happy about how her career is going. Unfortunately, though, because of everything with the Italian media and the Vatican, Carlo and Sofia decide, you know what, we're gonna annul our marriage because we're just gonna annul our marriage. This is too much. We don't want to go to jail for bigamy. You win, Vatican. We will annul our marriage. However, they do stay together. They don't break up. They just on paper have to annul their marriage. Sophia is obviously sad, but ever the Virgo, she gets back to work. And her next film is a very important one in her career. The film is called Two Women, and it is a war drama. It is in Italian. It's an Italian language film. In a war drama that is about a mother trying to protect her daughter from the horrors of war. Now, Sophia is offered the role of the mother, and she's very concerned about this initially because she's only 26 years old and she's thinking, you know, am I mature enough to play this role? But what she finds is she actually has all the experience she needs because she's experienced this. She lived through World War II with her mother. So she does have the experience needed for this. And I rewatched Two Women this past weekend, and you guys, I cried so much. Sophia's performance it's beautiful. Honestly, like, I myself was sitting there thinking, like, she doesn't have children at this point. The fact that she can play the emotions of a mother trying to shield their child from such horror as war is how talented she is. And I had that thought in my head, and then I went and read an interview that she gave where she was asked, you know, how were you able to portray this so convincingly and so, I don't think they use this word, but the word that I'm going to use for it is, oh my gosh, like, it's like visceral. Like, her emotions are very visceral. It's just amazing acting. And she's asked this, like, how were you able to play a mother this way when, you know, you're not a mother? She says, I played my mother because, you know, Sophia's mother had to guard her and try to protect her during World War II when, you know, all these air raids are going on and just all this terrible things are happening. And the quote that really stuck with me, and I don't know, like, it just hit me in the stomach, is she says, I cried for my mother. Because there are some crying scenes in that movie that are like, I mean, honestly, like, it's like you're getting punched in the stomach. The way that she plays that role, she deserves like every award for the rest of time, to be honest, because it's just amazing. Now, I'm not the only one that thinks that Sophia's performance was amazing. Joseph Levine was a very successful film producer who was responsible for like Godzilla, The Graduate, The Producers, and he watches 9 minutes of the film Two Women, and immediately, like 9 minutes in, he agrees to buy the rights to release the film in the United States, and he bets that Sophia will win an Academy Award for her performance. Sophia wins a BAFTA Award and a Cannes Film Festival Prize. She's nominated for an Academy Award, but she thinks there is no way she will win, so she decides to stay in Italy rather than travel to the US for the award ceremony. However, at 6:45 a.m. on April 10th, 1962, Cary Grant, Sophia's old pal, calls her up to let her know, you won. You won the Academy Award for Best Actress. With this win, Sophia becomes the first actress to ever win an Academy Award for a foreign language film. Sophia is now a star of worldwide fame. She is critically acclaimed as an actress. She is validated, like she is a worldwide superstar. She goes on to star in several big budget epic films, including El Cid, opposite Charlton Heston, my very favorite Moses of all time. She also stars in The Fall of the Roman Empire opposite Stephen Boyd. Her films in English are quite successful, but it's kind of becomes like well known among her fan base that she just thrives when she's doing Italian language films. That is where she truly shines as a star. So in 1963, she reunites with director Vittorio De Sica. He is the one that directed her in Two Women. And they plan a series of films that Carlo was going to produce. And the first of those is the film Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, which is a very successful Italian language romantic comedy. Now, while filming, Sofia finds out that she is pregnant. But after a very difficult 3.5 months of pregnancy, she collapses one day and is taken to the hospital where she miscarries. She's devastated, but again, we see Sofia throw herself into work when she is sad, and she goes back to filming and makes Marriage Italian Style, another film with De Sica, and she is nominated for another Academy Award for this film. Around this time, Sofia and Carlo become French citizens. They move to France and become French citizens, and in France, Carlo finally is able to get a legal divorce from his first wife. This paves the way for Sofia and Carlo to get married again, and they do so on April 9th, 1966. This marriage is recognized in Italy, and Sofia is overjoyed about that. But in 1967, the next year, she suffers from a second miscarriage that is even more physically painful and debilitating than the first. And her doctors tell her, you most likely will not survive another miscarriage. So obviously Carlo is like, you know what, I think it's just better that we don't have children. I don't want to lose you. And Sofia, though, she wants children. She wants a family, and she is determined. Sofia hears about a Swiss doctor who has had a lot of success treating women who had multiple miscarriages and helping them have successful full-term pregnancies. So when Sofia becomes pregnant for a third time, she goes to this doctor. He does a lot of tests, and he finds out that she has a hormone deficiency. She is deficient of one of the hormones that is vital to a successful pregnancy. So he begins giving her daily injections of this hormone. He also puts her on bed rest for the duration of her pregnancy, and her fans followed this pregnancy very closely. She gets a lot of letters of encouragement. There are like prayer groups. People are really just rooting for Sofia to have a successful and healthy pregnancy. And she does. In December of 1968, Sofia gives birth to a healthy baby boy, Carlo Ponti Jr. Over 450 reporters show up to try to get a picture of the baby. So he's like a royal baby because Sofia is so adored, and people related to this struggle. I mean, even back then, you know, people didn't talk, even today, people don't talk a lot about miscarriage. And so Sofia was really one of the first, you know, celebrities who had talked about this. And so people were rooting for her. They were rooting for her. And as a result, you see all of these reporters trying to get a picture of this baby because he's a little miracle baby, and everyone's really happy for Sofia. With the birth of her son, Sofia's priorities change, and she begins only accepting 1 to 2 films a year because she really wants to focus on her child and her growing family. She becomes pregnant again in 1972, and her Swiss doctor again helps her, gets her the hormone shots that she needs, and she gives birth to a second son, Eduardo, in January of 1973 when she is 38 years old. These are truly miracle babies, and Sofia loves being a mother. So she takes on very limited roles at this point in her career. She's very focused on her family. She also helps with an initiative that President Jimmy Carter has to end and prevent child abuse. In 1979, she writes her autobiography, Living and Loving, and she produces a 3-hour television movie about her life in which she plays her mother. Unfortunately, this film creates a rift between her and her mother actually leaves the US where she's been living with Carlo and Sofia and goes back to Italy, vowing to never speak to her daughter again. I'm not sure what about the film she disagreed with, but she wasn't happy. Now, At this same time, Sofia is being investigated in Italy for tax evasion. They basically are saying that when Carlo and Sofia became French citizens, they were doing so to like evade having to pay Italian taxes on their income. So if Sofia goes to Italy to try to reconcile with her mother, she may very likely be arrested. But Sofia decides, you know what, it's worth the risk. I won't be exiled from my home country, and I'm not going to risk not speaking to my mother. Sofia does return to Italy, and upon arriving, she is arrested and tried for tax evasion. She is found guilty and she's sentenced to 30 days in jail. She serves 17 days of her sentence before she is released. Her husband, Carlo, is actually acquitted of all charges, so he never goes to jail. This is a horrific experience for Sofia. She talks about this. She does press conferences when she's released from jail, just, talking about how, unfair she thought it was, but that she was willing to pay that price to be able to return to her home. And she does end up making peace with her mother. In 1981, Sofia is honored at the Oscars with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and she describes it as one of the best moments of her life. Sadly, later that same year, Sofia's mother, Romilda, passes away, but Sofia is with her and is able to hold her when she passes away, which is a big thing for Sofia because, there wasn't a father there. It was Sofia and her mom and her sister. That was what she had, was her mom. And so that's very, all mother-daughter relationships I think are very nuanced and complicated and special, but I can only imagine that her bond with her mother was even deeper because of everything that they went through and the poverty that they knew and the war. So this is a very sad time for Sofia, but quite luckily her and her mother had reconciled, so she was able to be there with her. Fun aside, I wasn't sure where to work this in, but Sofia's younger sister, Maria, actually marries the youngest son of Benito Mussolini sometime in the 60s. It's just kind of odd that happened. Sofia later becomes a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, and she continues to make films on occasion. As of filming, Sofia is 86 years old, and her most recent role was in the movie The Life Ahead, which was directed by her son Eduardo Ponti. That film is available on Netflix now. It can be hard to think of how to properly summarize someone's legacy when they're still alive. However, when I think of everything that Sofia endured as a child and then in adulthood, what I see is resilience. For Sofia to live a life filled with joy and love and happiness in spite of all the adversity that she faced is a testament to her will. She is strong. She is a survivor. She is an icon. And how lucky are we that today on this planet, we exist at the same time as Sophia Loren. I thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below who would you like to see in the next beauty biography, or do you have any fun facts about Sofia that maybe I missed? I would love to hear them. You can put those down below. I hope to see you in my next video. Until then, you take care of yourself. Bye.